People pleasers aren't actually generous. They're not even kind. They're afraid. But not for the reason you think. If you're watching this, you probably already know that feeling, that knot in your stomach, when someone asks for something and you want to say no, but the word gets stuck. That's not weakness. That's your survival instinct screaming. And here's the strange truth. The more you say yes to everyone else, the more you become someone you can't trust. Someone unreliable. Someone weak. That automatic yes that comes out of your mouth before you've even processed the request, that's not generosity. It's a survival instinct. Your brain has been wired to avoid conflict at all costs. And every time you say yes when you mean no, you're lying to yourself to feel safe in the moment. This is the people pleaser paradox. The more you agree to help others, the more you betray your own priorities, your energy, and your time. That constant approval you're chasing is a cheap currency, and you're spending your most valuable resources to buy it. Today, we're going to expose the 3 hidden costs of this reflex and give you a simple system to reclaim your no. But here's what actually changes. You'll stop wasting your mental energy on other people's priorities. You'll rebuild the self-trust that people-pleasing has eroded, and you'll finally have the focus and time to pursue what actually matters to you. The biology of the yes reflex. This isn't a personality flaw, it's a neurological shortcut. When someone makes a request, your brain doesn't first run a rational cost-benefit analysis. It's doing something completely different. It runs a threat detection scan. And here's why this matters. Once you understand that your yes is a survival reflex, not a character flaw, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you're weak or selfish for wanting to say no. Instead, you can work with your neurology rather than against it. You can build a system that outsmart your own wiring rather than relying on willpower alone. For thousands of years, social rejection meant literal danger. Exile from the tribe was a death sentence. So your amygdala, the ancient alarm bell in your brain, screams danger at the slightest hint of potential conflict or disapproval. This means you're living in a state of constant vigilance. You're reading the room. You're monitoring their tone. You're scanning for any sign that they might be disappointed. And that exhaustion? That's not laziness. That's your nervous system running a marathon it was never designed to run. Imagine your boss asks you to lead a project you're already drowning in work for. Your gut screams no. But before you can process it, that amygdala detects a threat. If I say no, they might think I'm not a team player. If they think that, I could lose status. If I lose status, I'm vulnerable. So your mouth says yes before your brain engages. Saying yes is the fastest way to silence that alarm. It gives you a quick hit of dopamine, the reward chemical, making you feel temporarily safe and accepted. Think of it as an approval economy. You have a finite amount of time, focus, and emotional energy, your capital. Every unnecessary yes is a withdrawal from that account. You're trading your limited resources for a fleeting feeling of social safety. The problem is, this reflex completely bypasses your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning and rational decision-making. It's a hardwired survival mechanism that is utterly mismatched for the modern world, where a no rarely carries life or death consequences. Willpower alone can't beat this because you're fighting millions of years of evolution. You need a system to outsmart your own wiring.
The 3 hidden costs of constant approval.
The first and most immediate cost is cognitive overload. Every yes is a new item on your mental to-do list. Most people pleasers blame themselves for being lazy or unfocused when they can't concentrate. But once you understand that it's not laziness, it's cognitive overload from overcommitment, you can stop the shame spiral and actually address the root cause. Your brain can only handle so many tasks at once. When you fill it with obligations you never intended to take on. So what happens when you do that? You create decision fatigue. You spend your best thinking on other people's priorities, leaving you tired and unable to focus on what actually matters to you. You say yes to covering a colleague's shift, then yes to helping a friend move, then yes to a meeting you didn't want. By 3 p.m., you're supposed to be working on your own project, the one that actually matters to your career. But your mental RAM is full. You can't focus. You spend the next 2 hours staring at a blank screen, and by the end of the day, you've accomplished nothing on what you actually care about. And here's the part that really hurts. You know exactly whose fault it is. You know you did this to yourself. You had the power to say no, and you didn't. So now you're not just tired, you're disappointed in yourself. You're the person who can't even protect their own priorities. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and do it all over again. That's cognitive overload in action. The constant context switching fractures your attention, making even simple tasks feel overwhelming. You're trying to run a marathon while carrying everyone else's baggage. The second cost is resentment debt. This is the emotional compound interest that accumulates silently. You agree to something in the moment to avoid discomfort, but that discomfort doesn't disappear. It transforms into quiet bitterness that grows over time. You start to feel angry at the person who asked, angry at the task itself, and angry at yourself for not speaking up. Watch what happens when this plays out in real life. You say yes to helping a friend with their business idea. You don't have time, but you say it anyway. Weeks pass. You're working nights on their project while your own goals sit untouched. One day, they mention they're thinking of hiring someone else to take over. Your response? Silence. Then anger. You start avoiding their calls. They feel the coldness and don't understand why. And you can't explain it to them, because how do you say, "I'm angry at you for asking me to help," when you were the one who said yes? So you just disappear. You're still in their life, but you're not really there. And the worst part? They probably think you don't care anymore. They have no idea you're quietly suffering over something they didn't even force you into. The friendship fractures, not because they asked too much, but because you never said no, and the bitterness ate it from the inside. This debt doesn't just strain your relationships, it corrodes your own sense of well-being from the inside out. You become a silent creditor, waiting for a payment of gratitude that never comes, because the other person never knew the cost you were paying. The third and most damaging cost is the loss of self-trust. This is the ultimate paradox of people-pleasing. In your effort to be reliable to others, you become profoundly unreliable to yourself. Every time you override your own needs and boundaries to accommodate someone else, you send a subconscious message: my priorities are not important. You teach yourself that your own word doesn't matter. And that's when the real damage starts. You stop making plans for yourself because you know you'll cancel them. You stop setting goals because you know you'll abandon them. You stop believing in your own commitments because you've broken so many of them, to yourself. You become a stranger to yourself. You look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back, because that person isn't you anymore. That person is just a collection of everyone else's needs. This erodes your confidence and creates a deep-seated anxiety, because how can you trust yourself to handle your own life if you're constantly betraying your own limits? The nice person identity becomes a prison, and the warden is the version of you that you've stopped believing in. The strategic no framework. You can't just decide to stop. You need a new protocol to override the ancient wiring. This is the pause, price, pivot method, and it works because it interrupts the automatic reflex before your amygdala can hijack your response. Here's what changes. Instead of saying yes and regretting it immediately, you'll pause and actually evaluate whether the request aligns with your priorities. Instead of feeling guilty for saying no, you'll feel confident because you're protecting what actually matters. The first rule is non-negotiable. You must create a mandatory pause. When a request comes in, your default response is no longer yes. It's, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." This simple buffer breaks the automatic panic response and gives your rational brain time to engage. Before, the old reflex. "Boss, can you take on the Johnson account?" You. "Yeah, sure, no problem." After. Pause, price, pivot. "Boss, can you take on the Johnson account?" You. "Let me check my current workload and get back to you by end of day." You. "I can't take on the full account, but I can review their strategy and give you high-level feedback. Or I can introduce you to someone who has capacity." That's the pivot. You're redirecting, not rejecting. Once you've paused, you move to the price phase. This is where you calculate the true cost of a yes. It's not just the time stated, it's the mental energy, the focus diverted from your priorities, and the potential resentment debt. Ask yourself, what will I have to sacrifice to make this happen? Is this the most important use of my resources right now? Be brutally honest. If the price is too high, you have your answer. Finally, you pivot. A strategic no isn't a rejection, it's a redirection of your resources. You deliver it with clarity and respect for both parties. For example, I can't take on that full project because of my current commitments, but I'd be happy to review the first draft and give you some high-level feedback. This maintains the relationship while protecting your boundaries. Each time you successfully use this framework, you're not just saying no to a request, you're saying yes to your own priorities and rebuilding the self-trust you've eroded. You're depositing integrity back into your own account. If you've been saying yes when you mean no, drop a comment below. I want to know, what's one request you've been dreading? Let's build this community of people who are reclaiming their time. Then stick around. I'm breaking down exactly how to use this framework in the next section. Conclusion: reclaiming your yes. The paradox is resolved when you realize that your most valuable yes is the one you give to your own mission. A manager I know spent 3 years saying yes to every request. She was exhausted, resentful, and her own projects were stalled. Then she started using this framework. She said no to 3 low-priority meetings a week. Within 2 months, she'd launched the initiative she'd been putting off for years. Her boss didn't respect her less. They respected her more, because her work became sharper and more focused. Her yes to her own priorities made her more valuable, not less. This is what's possible for you. More energy, more focus, more time for what actually matters. Relationships that are deeper because they're based on honesty, not resentment. And the confidence that comes from knowing you're living your own life, not managing everyone else's. If you're ready to stop sacrificing yourself for other people's approval, subscribe to Think Power. Every week, I'm releasing systems that turn self-awareness into real power. Join thousands of people who are reclaiming their lives. True generosity isn't possible when your own resources are depleted. By learning to say no strategically, you protect your ability to make a genuine impact. Your yes becomes powerful because it's a conscious choice, not a fearful reflex. Start small this week. Use the pause, price, pivot method on one request. Reclaim the authority over your own time and energy. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the first